Hey, welcome back to Yehusha's Glory channel, everybody. Last time we were reading in Enoch, and we were in, let's see, we were finished up at page 284, and we were going to pick up on chapter 74, and that is, if you remember last time, Father went into great detail, or the angel Uriel, I think, was doing a lot of the talking, telling Methuselah in superb detail how the sun, moon, and stars travel. Mostly the sun and the moon. They travel in and out of gates all around the earth. And if you hung through the whole thing, there was a couple of little interesting tidbits there. We'll add those into the summary at the end. I'm going to go ahead and pick up now. We have a lot of reading to do. We've got about 16 pages till we're done with the book of Enoch. And I'm going to try and see if we can get through 6 to 8 of them without the video getting too long. I'm going to read kind of quick, slowing down when something starts to, you know, where something gets a little more confusing. I'm going to try to get as much as I can through the video as we can fit in, and then try to finish the actual locking in of the of Enoch. And I made a mistake, actually. This lesson is going to start on page 285. So if you've already got your Sefer open, it's actually 285 right here. I wrote down next lesson last time, and it'll be chapter 76 is where we're picking up. And we're talking about the winds and where they come from. He was talking about how the winds bring blessings and they also bring destruction, and they're labeled to do just such a thing. They're named for that. I guess he's appointed them, Father has, to give us exactly what he wants to give us when he wants to give it to us. So here we go. 76 chapter, page 285, and the first wind is called the eastern because it is the first. The second is called the south, because El Elyon there descends, and frequently there descends, and is blessed forever. The western wind has the same of diminution, because there all the luminaries of heaven are diminished and descend. The fourth wind, which is named the north, is divided into 3 parts, one of which is for the habitation of man, and another for seas of water, with valleys, woods, rivers, shady places, and snow, and the third part, paradise. 7 high mountains I beheld, higher than all the mountains of the earth, from which frost proceeds, while days, seasons, and years depart and pass away. 7 rivers I beheld upon earth, greater than all rivers, one of which takes its course from the west into a great sea, its water flows. 2 come from the north to the sea, their waters flowing into the Erythraean Sea on the east. And with respect to the remaining 4, they take their course in the cavity of the north, 2 to their sea, the Erythraean Sea, and 2 are poured into a great sea, where also it is said is a desert. 7 great islands I saw in the sea and on the earth, 7 in the great sea. Excuse me, I've got some allergies happening today. The names of the sun are these. 1, Ariares, the other, Thomas. The moon has 4 names. The first is Asonia, the second, Ebla, the third, Benes, or Benese, and the fourth, Ere. These are the 2 great luminaries whose orbs are as the orbs of heaven, and the dimensions of both are equal. In the orb of the sun are 7 parts of light, which are added to it more than to the moon. By measure it is put in until the 7th portion of the sun has departed. They enter into the western gate, circuit by the north, and through the eastern gate go forth over the face of heaven. When the moon rises, it all appears in heaven, and the half of a 7th portion of light is all in it. In 14, the whole of its light is completed. These quintuples, light is put into it until 3 quintuples light is put into it. So 3 groups of 5. So 3 5-number periods, rather. Until 15, its light is completed. According to the signs of the year, it has 3 quintuples. The moon has the half of a 7th portion. During its diminution, on the first day, its light decreases a 14th part. On the second day, it decreases a 13th part. On the third day, a 12th part. On the fourth day, an 11th part. On the fifth day, a 10th part. On the sixth day, a 9th part. On the seventh day, it decreases an 8th part. On the 8th day, it decreases a 7th part. On the 9th day, it decreases a 6th part. On the 10th day, it decreases a 5th part. On the 11th day, it decreases a 4th part. On the 12th day, it decreases a 3rd part. On the 13th day, it decreases a 2nd part. On the 14th day, it decreases a half of its 7th part. And on the 15th day, the whole remainder of its light is consumed. On stated months, the moon has 29 days. It also has a period of 28 days. Uriel likewise showed me another regulation. When light is poured into the moon, how it is poured into it from the sun. All the time that the moon is in progress with its light, it is poured in the presence of the sun until light is in 14 days completed in heaven. And when it is wholly extinguished, its light is consumed in heaven, and on the first day it is called the new moon, for on that day light is received into it. It becomes precisely completed on the day that the sun descends into the west, while the moon ascends at night from the east. The moon then shines all the night until the sun rises before it, when the moon disappears in turn before the sun. Where light comes to the moon, there again it decreases until all its light is extinguished, and the days of the moon pass away. Then its orb remains solitary without light. During 3 months it affects in 30 days its period, and during 3 months it affects in 29 days each, in which it affects its decrease in its first period and in the first gate. In 170 days, and at the time of its going forth during 3 months, it appears 30 days each, and during 3 months it appears 29 days each. In the night it appears for each 20 as a man, and in the day as heaven, for it is nothing else except its light. And now, my son Methuselah, I have shown you everything, and every ordinance of the stars of heaven is finished. He showed me every ordinance respecting these, which is at all times and in all seasons, under every influence, in all years at the arrival and under the rule of each, during every month and every week, also the decrease of the moon, which is affected in the 6th gate, for in that 6th gate is its light consumed. From this is the beginning of the month, and its decrease is affected in the 6th gate in its period, until 177 days are completed. According to the mode of calculation by weeks, 25 days and 2 days. It is less than that of the sun, according to the ordinance of the stars, by 5 days in one time precisely. When that visible situation is completed, such is the appearance and likeness of every luminary, which Uriel the great angel, who conducts them. In those days Uriel answered and said to me, Behold, I have showed you all things, O Enoch, and all things have I revealed to you. You see the sun, the moon, and those which conduct the stars of heaven, which cause all their operations, seasons, and arrivals to return. In the days of sinners the years shall be shortened. Their seed shall be backward in their prolific soil, and everything done on earth shall be subverted, and disappear in its season. The rain shall be restrained, and heaven shall stand still. In those days the fruits of the earth shall be late, and not flourish in their season, and in their season the fruits of the trees shall be withheld. The moon shall change its laws, and not be seen at its proper period. But in those days shall heaven be seen, and barrenness shall take place in the borders of the great chariots of the west. It shall shine more than the orders of light, while many chiefs among the stars of authority shall err, perverting their ways and works. Those shall not appear in their seasons who commanded them, and all the classes of the stars shall be shut up against sinners. The thoughts of those who dwell on the earth shall transgress within them, and they shall be perverted in all their ways. They shall transgress and think themselves Elohim, while evil shall be multiplied among them, and punishment shall come upon them, so that all of them shall be destroyed. He said, O Enoch, look on the sphere of the tablets of heaven, which have gradually dropped down, and reading that which is written in it, understand every part of it. Then I looked on all which was written, and understood all, reading the Sefer and everything written in it, all the works of man, and all the children of flesh upon earth, during the generation of the world. Immediately after I blessed Yehusha, the King of glory, and who has thus forever formed the whole workmanship of the world. And I glorified Yehusha on account of his long suffering and blessing toward the children of the world. At that time I said, Blessed is the man who shall die, righteous and good, against whom no catalogue of crime has been written, and with whom iniquity is not found. Now here's something for y'all to remember. Biblically speaking, it says here, blessed somebody who doesn't have any iniquity written against them. You must remember that when you repent and try not to return to your sin, and you have asked in the name of Yehusha to be forgiven, that Father wipes your information clean of all the bad things you've done. And that is verifiable. I don't have the exact book, but that's just a note to be made. You don't have to be perfect your whole life. And even when you do sin, you do kind of fall to the wayside. Just ask Father to put his hands on your shoulders and push you forward in the path he wants you to be in. And I just feel like I need to tell you this because a lot of times, to me, it feels like, well, gosh, if I do anything wrong at all, I'm doomed. But that's not necessarily true. You must repent, tell Father. He can see everything you're doing. He knows every single thought. He knows everything you do in secret, every thought you have. So you can't fool the Holy Spirit. You let him know, okay, I did this wrong. I want to be better. Help me do that. So anyway, he will do that. And but you have to repent. You have to try to walk away from that. And if you keep messing up, you keep trying. If it takes 1,000 times, try 1,000 times. If it takes 10,000 times, try 10,000 times. But don't give up. Keep trying. So he says that, I'm going to repeat that. At that time, blessed is the man who shall die righteous and good, against whom no catalogue of crime has been written. So all the sins have been written down, but he wipes it clean every time you repent and ask for forgiveness. And with whom iniquity is not found. So if you die righteous and good, even though you've had a terrible sinning life, if you have repented and you love Yehusha and you have repented and he's blessed you, you're good to go. So don't feel bad for sins that you've done in the past if you have come forward from that. Barring a few sins that Father says we cannot get forgiveness for on the earth. We'll cover that later. But don't worry about it. He's in charge. He does the judging. Humans don't judge us. So here we go. I'm moving on. Okay. Immediately, let's see. Then, I'm in verse 7, chapter 80, page 286. Then those three holy ones caused me to approach and placed me on the earth before the door of my house. And they said unto me, explain everything to Methuselah, your son, and inform all your children that no flesh shall be justified before Yehusha, for he is their creator. During 1 year we shall leave you with your children until you shall again recover your strength, that you may instruct your family. Write these things and explain to them, to all your children. But in another year they shall take you from the midst of them, and your heart shall be strengthened. For the elect shall point out righteousness to the elect. The righteous with the righteous shall rejoice, congratulating each other. But the sinners with sinners shall die, and the perverted with the perverted shall be drowned. Those likewise who act righteously shall die on account of the works of man, and shall be gathered together on account of the works of the wicked. In those days they finished conversing with me, and I returned to my fellow men, blessing Yahuwah of worlds. Now, my son Methuselah, all these things I speak unto you and write for you. To you I have revealed all, and have given you Sepharim of everything. Preserve, my son Methuselah, the Sepharim written by your father, that you may reveal them to future generations. Wisdom have I given you to your children and your posterity, that they may reveal to their children for generations forever this wisdom in their thoughts. And that those who comprehend may not slumber, but hear with their ears, that they may learn this wisdom, and be deemed worthy of eating wholesome food. Blessed are all the righteous, blessed are all who walk in righteousness, in whom is no crime, as in sinners, when all their days are numbered. With respect to the progress of the sun in heaven, it enters and goes out of gate for 30 days, with the leaders of the 1,000 classes of the stars, with 4 which are added, and appertain to the 4 quarters of the year, which conduct them and accompany them at 4 periods. Respecting these, men greatly err, and do not calculate them in the calculation of every age, for they greatly err respecting them. Nor do men know accurately that they are in the calculation of the year, but indeed these are marked down forever, 1 in the 1st gate, 1 in the 3rd, 1 in the 4th, and 1 in the 6th, so that the year is completed in 364 days. Truly has been stated, and accurately has been calculated, that which is marked down. For the luminaries, the months, the fixed periods, the years, and the days, Uriel has explained to me and communicated to me, whom Yahuwah of all creation on my account commanded, according to the might of heaven, and the power which it possesses both by night and by day, to explain light to man of the sun, moon, and stars, and of all the powers of heaven which are turned with their respective orbs. This is the ordinance of the stars, which set in their places, in their seasons, in their periods, in their days, and in their months. These are the names of those who conduct them, who watch and enter in their seasons, according to their ordinance, in their periods, in their months, in their influence, and in their stations. 4 conductors of them first enter, who separate the 4 quarters of the year. After these, 12 conductors of their classes, who separate the months and the year, 364, with the leaders of 1,000, who distinguished between the days, as well as between the 4 additional ones, which conductors divide the 4 quarters of the year. These leaders of 1,000 are in the midst of the conductors, and the conductors are added each behind his station, and their conductors make the separation. These are the names of the conductors who separate the 4 quarters of the year, who are appointed: Melkel, Helamelech, Meliel, and Narel. And the names of those who conduct them are Adnarel, Iesusel, Ielumiel. These are the 3 who follow after the conductors of the classes, each following after the 3 conductors of the classes, which themselves follow after those conductors of the stations, who divide the 4 quarters of the year. In the first part of the year rises and rules Melchias, who is named Tamani, and Zahai, the southern sun. All the days of his influence which he rules are 91 days, and these are the signs of the days which are seen upon the earth. In the days of his influence, perspiration, heat, and trouble. All the trees become fruitful, the leaf of every tree comes forth, the grain is reaped, the rose and every species of flowers blossom in the field, and the trees of winter are dried up. It just made me laugh for a second, because these are the signs of his day, of the days which are seen upon the earth. And it said in the days of his influence, perspiration. And I thought about a really hot summer, and it cracked me up. So I started to giggle there, sorry. Anyway, so these are the names of the conductors who are under them: Barkel, Zelzabel, and another additional conductor of 1,000 is named Heloaleph. The days of those influence have been completed. The other conductor next after them is Helemelech, whose name they call the splendid Zahai, sun. All the days of his light are 91 days. These are the signs of the days upon earth, heat and drought, while the trees bring forth their fruits, warmed and concocted, and give their fruits to dry. The flocks follow, mate, and bear young. All the fruits of the earth are collected, with everything in the fields, and the vines are trodden. This takes place during the time of his influence. These are their names and orders, and the conductors who are under them, of those who are chiefs of 1,000. Gadael, Kael, Heel. And the name of the additional leader of 1,000 is Asphael. The days of his influence have been completed. And now I have shown you, my son Methuselah, every sight which I saw prior to your birth. I will relate another vision, which I saw before I was married. They resemble each other. The first was when I was learning a sefer, and the other before I was married to your mother. I saw a potent vision. And on account of these things, besought Yahuwah. I was lying down in the house of my grandfather Malalel. I saw in a vision heaven thrown down and removed, and when it fell upon the earth, I saw likewise the earth absorbed by a great abyss, and mountains suspended over mountains. Hills were sinking upon hills, lofty trees were gliding off from their trunks, and were in the act of being projected and of sinking into the abyss. And at these things the world fell down in my mouth. I cried out and said, the earth is destroyed. Then my grandfather Malalel raised me up and said to me, why do you thus cry out, my son? And wherefore thus do you lament? I related to him the whole vision which I had seen. He said to me, confirmed is that which you have seen, my son, and potent the vision of your dream respecting every secret sin of the earth. Its substance shall sink into the abyss, and a great destruction take place. Now, my son, rise up and beseech Yahuwah of glory, for you are faithful, that a remnant, so that a remnant may be left upon earth, and that he would not wholly destroy it. My son, all this calamity upon earth comes down from heaven. Upon earth shall there be a great destruction. Then I arose, prayed and entreated, and wrote down my prayer for the generations of the world. Entreated is another word we're going to talk about the definition of. I didn't understand that word. Entreated is when you're asking for forgiveness on the behalf of somebody. Anyway, we'll cover that later in the video where we do the definitions. So he prayed and entreated. He wrote down his prayer for the generations of the world, explaining everything to my son Methuselah. Okay. When I went down below, and looking up to heaven, beheld the sun proceeding from the east, the moon descending to the west, a few stars, and everything which Elohim has known from the beginning, I blessed Yahuwah of judgment, and magnified him, because he has sent forth the sun from the windows of the east, that ascending and rising in the face of heaven, it might spring up and pursue the path which has been pointed out to it. So after all that reading we did about the sun and the moon, if we were to sit and log that day to day for 364 days, I'm willing to bet money that it would happen precisely the way it's written down in this book. If I have the energy to sit and try to do that particular study, I don't know. But somebody out there might. So anyway, here's what's written is that information about that. It just was an interesting point. I thought I'd stop and say that for a second. Okay, we're on 83, page 288. I lifted up my hands in righteousness and blessed the Holy and the Great One. I spoke with the breath of my mouth and with a tongue of flesh which Elohim has formed for all the sons of mortal men, that with it they may speak, giving them breath, a mouth, and a tongue to converse with. Blessed are you, O Yahuwah, the King, great and powerful in your greatness. Yahuwah of all the creatures of heaven, King of kings, Elohim of the whole world, whose reign, whose kingdom, and whose majesty endure forever and ever. From generation to generation shall your dominion exist. All the heavens are your throne forever, and all the earth your footstool forever and ever. For you have made them, and over all you reign. No act whatsoever exceeds your power. With your wisdom is unchangeable, nor from your throne and from your presence is it ever averted. You know all things, see and hear them, nor is anything concealed from you, for you perceive all things. The angels of your heavens have transgressed, and on mortal flesh shall your wrath remain until the day of the great judgment. Now then, O Elohim, Yahuwah, and mighty King, I entreat you and beseech you to grant my prayer, that a posterity may be left to me on earth, and that all of mankind may not perish, that the earth may not be left destitute, and destruction take place forever. O my Adonai, let the race perish from off the earth, which has offended you, but a righteous and upright race establish for the plant of a seed forever. Hide not your face, O Yahuwah, from the prayer of your servant. After this I saw another dream and explained it all to you, my son. Enoch arose and said to his son Methuselah, to you, my son, will I speak. Hear my words and incline your ear to the visionary dream of your father. Before I married your mother Edna, I saw a vision on my bed, and behold, a cow sprung forth from the earth, and this cow was white. Afterward a female heifer sprung forth, and with it another heifer. The one was black, and one was red. The black heifer then struck the red one, and pursued it over the earth. From that period I could see nothing more of the red heifer, but the black one increased in bulk, and the female heifer came with him. After this I saw that many cows proceeded forth, resembling him and following after him. The first female young also went out in the presence of the first cow and sought the red heifer, but found him not. And she lamented with a great lamentation, while she was seeking him. Then I looked until that first cow came to her, from which time she became silent and ceased to lament. Afterwards she calved another white cow, and again calved many cows and black heifers. In my sleep also I perceived a white bull, which in like manner grew and became a large white bull. After him many white cows came forth, resembling him, and they began to calve many white cows, which resembled them, and followed each other. Again I looked attentively while sleeping, and surveyed heaven above, and behold, a single star fell from heaven, which, being raised up, ate and fed among those cows. After that I perceived other large and black cows, and behold, all of them changed their stalls and pastures, while their young began to lament one with another. Again I looked in my vision and surveyed heaven. When beheld, I saw many stars, which descended and projected themselves from heaven to where was the first star, into the midst of those young ones, while the cows were with them, feeding in the midst of them. I looked at and observed them, when behold, they all acted after the manner of horses, and began to approach the young cows, all of whom became pregnant, and brought forth elephants, camels, and asses. At these, all the cows were alarmed and terrified. When they began biting with their teeth, swallowing and striking with their horns, they began also to devour the cows. And behold, all the children of the earth trembled, shook with terror at them, and suddenly fled away. Again I perceived them when they began to strike and to swallow each other, and the earth cried out. Then I raised my eyes a second time toward heaven, and saw in a vision that, behold, there came forth from heaven, as it were, the likeness of white men. One came forth from thence, and three with him. Those three who came forth last seized me by my right hand, and raising me up from the generations of the earth, elevated me to a high station. Then they showed me a lofty tower on the earth, while every hill became diminished. And they said, Remain here until you perceive what shall come upon those elephants, camels, and asses, upon the stars, and upon all the cows. Then I looked at that one of the four who came forth first. He seized the first star which fell down from heaven, and binding it hand and foot, he cast it into a valley narrow, deep, stupendous, and gloomy. Excuse me. Allergies are getting me. And binding it hand and foot, he cast it into a gloomy valley. Then one of them drew his sword and gave it to the elephants, camels, and asses, who began to strike each other, and the whole earth shook on account of them. And when I looked in the vision, behold, one of those four angels who came forth, hurled from heaven, collected together and took all the great stars whose form partly resembles that of horses, and binding them all hand and foot, cast them into the cavities of the earth. Then one of those four went to the white cows and taught them a mystery. While the cow was trembling, it was born and became a man, and fabricated for himself a large ship. In this he dwelt, and 3 cows dwelt with him in that ship, which covered them. Again I lifted up my eyes toward heaven and saw a lofty roof. Above it were 7 cataracts, which poured forth on a certain village much water. Again I looked, and behold, there were fountains open on the earth in that large village. The water began to boil up and rose over the earth, so that the village was not seen, while its whole soil was covered with water. Much water was over it, darkness and clouds. Then I surveyed the height of this water, and it was elevated above the village. It flowed over the village and stood higher than the earth. Then all the cows which were collected there, while I looked on them, were drowned, swallowed up, and destroyed in the water, but the ship floated above it. All the cows, the elephants, the camels, and the asses were drowned on the earth, and all cattle. Nor could I perceive them, neither were they able to get out, but perished, and sunk into the deep. Again I looked in the vision, until those cataracts from that lofty roof were removed, and the fountains of the earth became equalized, while other depths were opened, into which the water began to descend until the dry ground appeared. The ship remained on the earth, the darkness receded, and it became light. Then the white cow, which became a man, went out of the ship, and the 3 cows with him. One of the 3 cows was white, resembling that cow. One of them was red as blood, and one of them was black. And the white cow left them. Then began wild beasts and birds to bring forth. Of all these, the different kinds assembled together: lions, tigers, wolves, dogs, wild boars, foxes, rabbits, and the hanzar, the sisset, the avest, kites, the phoncus, the ravens. Then the white cow was born in the midst of them, and they began to bite each other. When the white cow, which was born in the midst of them, brought forth a wild ass and a white cow at the same time, and many wild asses, then the white cow, which was born, brought forth a black wild sow and a white sheep. That wild sow also brought forth many swine, and that sheep brought forth 12 sheep. When those 12 sheep grew up, they delivered one of them to the asses. Again those asses delivered that sheep to the wolves, and he grew up in the midst of them. Then Yahuwah brought the 11 sheep, that they might dwell and feed with him in the midst of the wolves. They multiplied and there was abundance of pasture for them, but the wolves began to frighten and oppress them, while they destroyed their young ones. And they left their young in torrents of deep water. Excuse me. Now the sheep began to cry out on account of their young, and fled for refuge to their Adonai. One, however, which was saved, escaped, and went away to the wild asses. I beheld the sheep moaning, crying, and petitioning their Adonai with all their might, until Yahuwah of the sheep descended at their voice from lofty habitation, went to them and inspected them. He called to that sheep which had secretly stolen away from the wolves, and told him to make the wolves understand that they were not to touch the sheep. Then that sheep went to the wolves with the word of Yahuwah, when another met him and proceeded with him. Both of them together entered the dwelling of the wolves, and conversing with them, made them understand that henceforward they were not to touch the sheep. Afterwards, I perceived the wolves greatly prevailing over the sheep with their whole force. The sheep cried out, and their Adonai came to them. He began to strike the wolves, who commenced a grievous lamentation. But the sheep were silent, nor from that time did they cry out. I then looked at them until they departed from the wolves. The eyes of the wolves were blind, who went out and followed them with all their might, but Yahuwah of the sheep proceeded with them and conducted them. All his sheep followed him. His countenance, terrific and splendid, and glorious was his aspect. Yet the wolves began to follow the sheep until they overtook them in a certain lake of water. Then that lake became divided, the water standing up on both sides before their face. And while their Adonai was conducting them, he placed himself between them and the wolves. The wolves, however, perceived not the sheep, but went into the midst of the lake, following them, and running after them into the lake of water. But when they saw Yahuwah of the sheep, they turned to fly from before his face. Then the water of the lake returned, and that suddenly, according to its nature, it became full, and was raised up until it covered the wolves. And I saw that all of them, which had followed the sheep, perished and were drowned. But the sheep passed over this water, proceeding to a wilderness, which was without both water and grass. And they began to open their eyes and to see. Then I beheld Yahuwah of the sheep inspecting them, and giving them water and grass. The sheep was proceeding and conducting them. And when he had ascended the top of the lofty rock, Yahuwah of the sheep sent him to them. Afterwards I perceived their Adonai standing before them, with an aspect terrific and severe. And when they all beheld him, they were frightened at his countenance. All of them were alarmed and trembled. They cried out after that sheep, and to the other sheep, who had been with him, and who was in the midst of them, saying, We are not able to stand before our Adonai, or to look upon him. Then that sheep who conducted them went away and ascended the top of the rock. When the sheep began to grow blind, and to wander from the path which he had shown them, but he knew it not. Their Adonai, however, was moved with great indignation against them, and when that sheep had learned, he descended from the top of the rock, and coming to them found that there were many which had become blind, and had wandered from his path. As soon as they beheld him, they feared and trembled at his presence, and became desirous of returning to their fold. Then that sheep, taking with him other sheep, went to those which had wandered, and afterwards began to kill them. They were terrified at his countenance. Then he caused those which had wandered to return, who went back to their fold. I likewise saw there in the vision that this sheep became a man, built a house for Yahuwah of the sheep, and made them all stand in the house. I perceived also that the sheep which proceeded to meet this sheep, their conductor, died. I saw too that all the great sheep perished, while smaller ones rose up in their place, entered into a pasture, and approached a river of water. Then that sheep, their conductor who became a man, was separated from them and died. All the sheep sought after him. They cried for him with bitter lamentation. I saw likewise that they ceased to cry after that sheep and passed over the river of water, and that there arose other sheep, all of whom conducted them instead of those who were dead and who had conducted them. Then I saw the sheep entered into a goodly place, and the territory delectable and glorious. I saw also that they became satiated, that their house was in the midst of a delectable territory, and that sometimes their eyes were opened, and that sometimes they were blind, until another sheep arose and conducted them. He brought them all back, and their eyes were opened. Then dogs, foxes, and wild boars began to devour them, until another sheep arose, the master of the flock, one of themselves, a ram, to conduct them. This ram began to butt on every side those dogs, foxes, and wild boars, until they all perished. With his eyes he saw the ram in the midst of them, who had laid aside his glory, and he began to strike the sheep, treading upon them and behaving himself without dignity. Then their Adonai sent a sheep to a still different sheep, and raised him up to be a ram, and to conduct them instead of that sheep who had laid aside his glory. Going therefore to him, and conversing with him alone, he raised up that ram and made him a prince and leader of the flock, all the time that the dogs troubled the sheep. The first ram paid respect, to this latter ram. Then the latter ram arose and fled away from before his face. And I saw that those dogs caused the first ram to fall. But the latter ram arose and conducted the smaller sheep. That ram likewise begat many sheep and died. Then there was a smaller sheep, a ram instead of him, which became a prince and leader, conducting the flock. And the sheep increased in size and multiplied, and all the dogs, foxes, and wild boars feared and fled away from him. That ram also struck and killed all the wild beasts, so that they could not again prevail in the midst of the sheep, nor at any time ever snatch them away. And that house was made large and wide, a lofty tower being built upon it by the sheep, for Yehusha of the sheep. The house was low, but the tower was elevated and very high. Then Yehusha of the sheep stood upon the tower and caused a full table to approach before him. Again I saw that those sheep wandered and went various ways, forsaking that their house, and that their Adonai called to some among them, whom he sent to them. But these the sheep began to kill, and when one of them was saved from slaughter, he leaped and cried out against those who were desirous of killing him. But Yehusha of the sheep delivered him from their hands, and made him ascend to him, and remain with him. He sent also many others to them to testify, and with lamentations to exclaim against them. Again I saw, when some of them forsook the house of their Adonai and his tower, wandering all sides and growing blind, I saw that Yehusha of the sheep made a great slaughter among them in their pasture, until they cried out to him in consequence of that slaughter. Then he departed from the place, and left them in the power of lions, tigers, wolves, and the hyenas, and in the power of foxes and of every beast. And the wild beasts began to tear them. I saw too that he forsook the house of their fathers and their tower, giving them all the power of the lions to tear and devour them, into the power of every beast. Then I began to cry out with all my might, imploring Yehusha of the sheep, and showing me how the sheep were devoured by the beasts of prey. But he looked on in silence, rejoicing that they were devoured, swallowed up, and carried off, leaving them in the power of every beast for food. He called also 70 shepherds, and resigned to them the sheep, that they might overlook them. saying to them and to their associates, every one of you henceforward overlook the sheep, and whatsoever I command you, do, and I will deliver them to you numbered. I will tell you which of them shall be slain, and these destroy. And he delivered the sheep to them. Then he called to another and said, understand, and watch everything which the shepherds shall do to these sheep, for many more of them shall perish than I have commanded, of every excess and slaughter which the shepherds shall commit. There shall be an account, as how many may have perished by my command, and how many they may have destroyed at their own heads. Of all the destruction by each of the shepherds there shall be an account, and according to the number I will cause a recital to be made before me, how many they have destroyed of their own heads, and how many they have delivered up to destruction, that I may have this testimony against them, that I may know all their proceedings, and that, delivering to them, I may see what they will do, whether they will act as I have commanded them or not. However, they shall be ignorant. Neither shall you make any explanation to them, neither shall you reprove them, but there shall be an account of all the destruction done by them in their respective seasons. Then they shall begin to kill and destroy more than it was commanded them. And they left the sheep in the power of the lions, so that very many of them were devoured and swallowed up by lions and tigers, and wild boars preyed upon them. That tower they burnt, and overthrew that house. Then I grieved extremely on account of the tower, because the house of the sheep was overthrown. Neither was I afterwards able to perceive whether they again entered the house. The shepherds likewise, and their associates, delivered them all to all the wild beasts, that they might devour them. Each of them in his season, according to his number, was delivered up. Each of them, one with another, was described in a sefer, or sefer. How many of them, one with another, were destroyed in a sefer? More, however, than was ordered. Everyone killed and destroyed. Then I began to weep, and was greatly indignant on account of the sheep. In like manner also I saw in the vision him who wrote, how he wrote down one, destroyed by the shepherds every day. He descended, remained and exhibited each of his sephirim, to Yehusha of the sheep, all which they had done, and all which each of them had made away with, and all which they had delivered up to destruction. He took the sefer up in his hands, read it, sealed it, and deposited it. After this, I saw shepherds overlooking for 12 hours. And behold, 3 of the sheep departed, arrived, went in, and began building all which was fallen down of that house. But the wild boars hindered them, although they prevailed not. Again, they began to build as before, and raised up that tower which was called a lofty tower. And again they began to place before the tower a table, and with every impure and unclean kind of bread upon it. Moreover also all the sheep were blind, could not see, as were the shepherds likewise. Thus were they delivered up to the shepherds for a great destruction, who trod them under foot and devoured them. Yet was their Adonai silent, until all the sheep in the field were destroyed. The shepherds and the sheep were all mixed together, but they did not save them from the power of the beasts. Then he who wrote the sefer ascended, exhibited it, and read it at the residence of Yehusha of the sheep. He petitioned him for them, and prayed, pointing out every act of the shepherds, and testifying before him against them all. Then taking the sefer, he deposited it with him and departed. We're going to take a break right there. We're going to pick up again in the next video on chapter 89 of Enoch on page 292 of the Sefer. And I'll write that in so that we have that ready to go. Hope you've enjoyed this. We just had one incredible vision. It sounds like a vision that goes on for many life cycles, many generations. I can't tell exactly. We'll have to go over that a little bit deeper. We may do a study just on that vision and try to see if any of us have any ideas about exactly what that means, or what kind of feelings they brought to us, or ideas. So thanks for joining me. I will cut this off right now. We will see you next time. Next time we're going to finish up a little more of Enoch in the Sefer. Thanks for joining us, and I will talk to you soon.